Evidence before the Royal Commission on Indian Currency and Finance. Part 4. I am not quite sure that I follow the latter part of your reply. What I say is that although the production of gold may not be increased physically from the mines, yet the use of substitutes for gold in modern days is on such a vast scale that the quantity of gold in the present circulation might appear to be large enough for a long period of time for the transaction of the world, even without new additions from the mines. You have no more statistical calculations which you would care to put before the Commission as to your estimate of the future supply of gold? No, I have made no estimates. This is a matter, of course, which is of great importance for the consideration of the Commission. So let me put to you one or two estimates that I have been supplied with from other sources. These are estimates as to the effect upon general gold prices of the movement of the relation between the demand for gold and the supply of gold for a period of years. They are forecasts made at various dates by authorities and they are referred to the year 1930. What is done is to measure the effect of the gold supply upon prices by trying to forecast the general level of prices in 1930 by reference to 1913 as the 100 standard and thus to see what the future of the world in this regard is. I have here an estimate of Sir James Wilson made in 1921 who estimates that the result of these factors will be that the general price level in 1930 will be stable at 115. That is a substantial fall you see from the present figure which is around 158. Then there is that estimate to which you have already referred to, the Howard Business Barometer in 1922, which estimates that in 1930 the general price level should be around 150 and should be stable at that figure. Then there is Professor Gregory who makes an estimate in the near past, May 1995, who estimates the general price level will stand around 162 in 1930 and should be rising at that figure. So he is the one who is most of your opinion. And finally, there is Mr. Joseph Kitchen, an eminent authority who in July 1925 made a forecast that in 1930 the general price level should be expressed by a figure of 1920 by 120 and should be falling at that figure. Of these four attempts to forecast the position, three anticipate that the prices will have fallen at that time, two believe that they will be stable at that lower level, one Mr. Kitchen believes that they will be falling at the lower level, and only one believes that they will be higher than they are now and rising. I will put it in this way. In view of these very careful attempts to estimate the situation, does it not teach us the necessity of exercising great caution in making the assumption that it is unnecessary in order to maintain prices stable to economize the use of gold? I am rather in favor of falling prices rather than rising prices, and I am glad if they do fall and fall rapidly too. I think it is good for the nation that there should be a fall in prices rather than a rise in prices. So these estimates do not really deter me from making my proposals. Nevertheless, there is some different basis for your opinion. I take those opinions for what they are worth. I am not in a position to contradict them because I have never made any estimates. But somehow this is my belief that already the existing amount of gold is so large and the capacity of the countries of the world to use that currency, any currency, is so small that the supply of gold is likely to remain larger for a long period and that there is, in my opinion, not much chance of prices falling. Then there is a further question. I should preface it by saying that you are dealing here with the abolition of the exchange standard. Yes. In paragraph 5, you say, the gold standard reserve is peculiar in one respect, namely this. The assets, that is, the reserve and the liabilities, that is, the rupees, are dangerously correlated by reason of the fact that the reserve cannot increase without an increase in the rupee currency. I am going to ask you to expand that a little, and in order to show you what I think needs expansion, I would put these possible questions by a critic. Might not a critic say, you say that the reserve cannot increase without an increase in the rupee currency, and this critic might say, why should it? He would say, if the currency cannot increase without an increase in the reserve, would that not be a most desirable state of affairs? Have you followed my point? I will explain in this way. For instance, there are the bank issues and the reserves of the bank. If you compare, for instance, the bank reserves with the bank issues and the currency and the gold standard reserves of the government of India with the rupee issues, you will see this, that when the bank issues are limited, the reserve increases and vice versa. But here you cannot, for instance, reduce the rupee currency without also reducing your reserve. My point is this, I say alright, but look at it from the other point of view. However that may be, what appeals to me is that you cannot reduce your reserves without reducing your rupee currency, and that is what I desire to effect. Quite true, I admit that. But my submission is this: what is the use of reserve really? Suppose you have an enormous reserve and you also have an enormous rupee circulation. Does the fact that you have a large reserve in store in some safe in any way affect the value of the rupee? It does not. The value of the rupee will be affected simply by its quantity and the volume of circulation. Its value has nothing to do with the reserve at all. Backing absolutely has no effect on the value of currency except, of course, in times in which it is disorganized. It may lead to some confidence in that currency, but I submit that when currency has come to such a pass that people have to have had confidence, I say that currency has been absolutely inflated. Accepting no doubt the proposition that the value of the currency will be ultimately decided by its total volume in relation to the business. What I say is this: that this relation is so dangerously correlated, and I am sure you cannot indefinitely go on coining rupees simply because there is a gold reserve. If you go historically into this matter, my submission is that such has really been the case. In the history of India, people who have had to deal with currency were so much infatuated by the idea that they must have had some reserve that the coinage of rupees was really initiated for that purpose. The coinage of rupees in India in 1893 and 1898, when the Fowler Committee's report was brought into operation and reforms were introduced as a point, Sir Edward Law was so much obsessed by the volume of rupees in circulation that he felt that there must be some reserve, and it was on this ground that he proposed to the Secretary of State that the government should be allowed to coin rupees. If he knew properly that the value of rupees would maintain themselves if they were limited in volume, then he would certainly not have gone on increasing the currency. I am recommending simply to the government of India recommended to the Secretary of State in 1893. To turn to the immediate point, the function of a reserve under these conditions is to maintain stability, is it not? I think a reserve ought not to be there. The currency is something like any commodity which maintains its value simply because of the law of supply and demand. Do you reject the proposition that the function of a reserve is to maintain stability? Yes, I do. I do not think a reserve has anything to do. In fact, a reserve maintains itself when the currency is limited. It does not maintain the currency. Let us now consider your practical proposals for the reform of the currency. You say the following then are the requirements of the rupees by absolutely closing the mints. My plan for the reform of the Indian currency. 1. Stop the coinage of rupees by absolutely closing the mints to the government as they are to the public. 2. Open a gold mint for the coinage of a suitable gold coin. 3. Fix a ratio between the gold coin and the rupee. 4. Rupees not to be convertible in gold and gold not to be convertible in rupees, but both to circulate as unlimited legal tender at the ratio fixed by law. A question which does suggest itself to a practical man there is, under those circumstances, how are you to maintain the ratio between the gold coin and the rupee, and how are you to prevent one going to a discount or a premium in comparison with the fall in accordance with the balance of the country's trade? Well, the rupee will maintain its value by reason of the fact that it will be limited in volume. No more issues of rupees are to be issued. The end.